adversary over the information purification for the first time. Secure from the pests of the weapon that any fleet or army on earth be them with their own. He shall prevail.
From the Great Basin to the Rockies to the four corners of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. This is KMMU Main Street Media Utah coming to you live. We are streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, and our website, kmmu.org. Please join our host, John Twitchell, for Let's Talk Utah's Talk with John.
Main Street Media Utah, this is Talk with John, and today is April 29th, Tuesday. It's roughly 4:17, and I'm grateful to be with you here today. I've got a great guest. I'll be introducing him momentarily, but first I want to start off with, as I like to start off every show. Now, I like to give out the show prayer and the show mantra. Now, let's be clear. The show prayer and the show mantra do come from my brain, come from my heart. It comes from the best part of my heart. Unfortunately, it's not always the part of my heart that shows. And the more that I can align that with the Lord of this land, who is Jesus Christ, the better I am. Unfortunately, I don't always align. So let's get to the show prayer and the show mantra, and then I'll be introducing my guest here in just a moment. I hope my show is a gift. Show prayer is, I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra, where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. That's taken from places throughout Scripture, as well as Article 7 in the Constitution in the year of our Lord. When they spoke of the Lord of this land was Jesus Christ. Now, the God of this world is not Jesus Christ, it's Satan. But the Lord of this land, they knew, was Jesus Christ. All right. Let's bring on my guest. And let's get him on now. I'm bringing him in. Phil Lyman. Y'all know him. You all love him. Frankly, I wish I was saying Governor Phil Lyman, but I didn't get my way. I didn't pray hard enough, Phil. That's the bottom line. And I didn't convince enough people. So I owe you an apology for that I didn't do a better job. So thank you for joining us. Now, real quickly, for those of you that don't know Phil Lyman, he ran for governor. He almost got the governor. He should have gotten the governor if things were handled properly here in this state. And we'll be covering a little bit of that. And then also he happens to be in Blanding, right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. Down in Blanding, great businessman. And now joining me, he's a guest. In fact, he was a guest last Friday for political head trauma, and now he's joining me. He's lowered himself enough. See, he is one of those really guys that should be like up here, like off screen, and he's lowered himself way down to the floor, actually like below subgrade. For those of you that are in the building world, he's gone down to below subgrade to join me here on Talk with John. So Phil, thank you for joining me.
It's good to be
brother.
with you, John. And yeah, it's an upgrade for me. Anytime I can talk to you, and you've been with me from the very beginning on this political stuff. So yeah, we're brothers when it comes to this fight. So yeah, I don't discount that one bit.
Well, okay. Well, thank you. I will accept. I appreciate. My mom said just say, take those things graciously. Okay. Phil, I love you, brother. You are one of the best. We are, folks, we're getting a little late start because Phil and John were pontificating about the real world, the real worries of the world. And we can't do everything that we would want to do. Oh, that I could be an angel and be given power to change the world like I want to change it. And frankly, but bottom line is the angel from down below has sometimes more pull on me than I would like to admit. But I do want to be with my Savior when all is said and done. So that's what I'm working for. All right. So enough about that. Enough religious waxing and pontificating. Let's talk about what's going on with Phil Lyman. Phil Lyman ran for governor. Frankly, like I said, he should have been governor. He is now running for the state GOP chair. I hope I get to be able to vote for that. I've got some changing in my life. I'm going to be changing addresses, and depending on when I change addresses, I don't know if it's proper, so I'm trying to figure that out with my chair, with the precinct chair is the proper term. So want to get that worked out because I want to be a good little doobie as opposed to so many of the mainstream Republicans, shall we say, some of the rhinos that are willing to do anything anyway. So let's start with just running for the GOP chair. What made you decide to do that?
Well, for people that are listening, the state Republican Party has an organization. They've got a state central committee, which is about 200 people, 180 to 200 people. And those central committee members make up the board of directors for the Utah GOP. They're the ones that pass the bylaws. They do all this. The chair is just chairs those meetings, make sure that those things run well. Also in charge of putting on the convention, has a lot of influence over how the committees are organized. He is the liaison between the Republican Party of Utah and the lieutenant governor, which will be interesting if I am that liaison. So there's a lot of things that the chair should do and could do, but he's not a king. He's not, in charge of the GOP. Really, that is the state central committee. So every 2 years they elect a new state chair, and so that's coming up on May 17th at UVU in Provo. All the state delegates will vote on that. So it's not a general election; it'll be the state delegates. I'm running.
Well, I think that's actually a pretty good venue. I would love to see. I think that's a good venue to hold it in. I know for you guys down south, that's a little ways to go, but yeah, I think it's
Provo's
a
good
venue.
spot. It's a good central spot.
Even better, I would say, than the Mountain America Credit Union, whatever it is in Sandy. I think it's a much better spot.
I like the stadium.
To hold it in. So why did you decide this is something I want to run for?
To say I want to run for it is a little bit of a stretch, but
okay,
something I felt I needed to run for, and I.
Well, how about this? Yeah. I'm sure some people asked you to run for it and begged you to run for it. Drafted you is probably a good way to put it. And why did you agree to do it?
So we embarked on a quest to expose corruption And my main focus has been the elections. I mean, there's plenty of corruption in all kinds of areas, but if you can't change who you elect to office, then you can't change any of the other things. So that was behind my run for governor completely. I'm not an office seeker, but I saw some real problems in running for governor. We exposed those over and over and over, and continue to expose those. The GOP, the state GOP, is not an extension of the government. We're not a state entity. We're a private organization, and we have the right of association, yet we are constantly bowing to the state legislature or to the lieutenant governor's office. And that definitely happened during the gubernatorial race. I don't think there was a better orchestrated opportunity for the GOP to step up than the 2024 gubernatorial race. And they didn't do it. They flat did not step up. They didn't defend the signature, or they didn't investigate the signature path, and they had an opportunity to. They could have. I'm breaking the bank trying to file lawsuits and everything else just to get access to signatures. And the GOP should have stepped forward and said, whoa, Lieutenant Governor, it's our candidate. It's our primary. This is who the Republican Party is putting forward. We have a right to, verify and validate the signatures. They didn't do that. They didn't do anything with the election itself, the primary election, which I believe has some massive cheating on it. So when people, like you said at the beginning, we didn't do enough. We did do enough. It was stolen in a really direct way. Some people say, oh, well, that's a really bold statement to make.
Okay, so let me be clear. I didn't do enough because I didn't have the whole state voting for you. I would say you did enough and your team did enough.
Yeah. So if you go to a primary election, which you shouldn't have had to go to, but say you go to a primary election and say you win that primary election, 55%, but the results come out and say you lost to 46%. I don't know how you go back and say, gosh, we should have done a few more billboards or a few more ads. We should have tried to win by 60% or 70%, which is kind of the Donald Trump thing. It's like win so big that they can't cheat. And that's not an option for us. I mean, we just, you win an election or you lose an election. And people say, how audacious for Phil Lyman to say that Spencer Cox cheated or that there was cheating in the primary election. And the beautiful thing about that, it would be so easy to prove me wrong just by opening up the cast vote records, which is what you have always done in elections throughout history. Those cast vote records belong to the people. In the case of a primary election, they belong to the Utah GOP, and yet we were not allowed to look at those things. So let us take a look at the signatures. If you're going to put a candidate in by signature, let us take a look at the cast vote records. If you're going to elect a Republican primary nominee to the general ballot, let the Republican GOP at least look at that. They didn't do that. And that's so now I'm saying if the GOP is not going to step up, they should. And maybe we need a different chairman in there. I have Rob Axon is the current chairman, and he's a dear friend of mine. Some people don't like me to say that, but we go way back. I really, really like Rob. My problem, and we've had this discussion, is he's looking to the higher ups, to that, the oligarchy above him, and saying, we don't want to make these people upset. We're going to lose money. We're going to lose the support of the governor, of the legislature. We're going to lose all of this support from this higher up. And I'm looking down at the people saying, this is where the power comes from. And honestly, on this whiteboard in back of me 20 years ago, I'd drawn a pyramid of power, power and money. Does it come from the top down or does it come from the bottom up? And a friend of mine walked in and he looked at it just like the day after I wrote it. He looked at it and he said, putting something like that out can get you in a lot of trouble. And he was right. And that's kind of where we're at. It's like, do we have a Republican form of government where the people are the source of the power, and the governments derive their just powers from the consent of those people? Or is it a top-down thing where it's like you make the wrong people mad, you're not going to get any money, so you've got to build stadiums and do things for people that would not normally happen? And that's the heart of who I am, is looking at government saying, why are they making such bad policies that really, really hurt people? Government's supposed to help people, not destroy their lives. And too often it's just pandering to that power. I don't want the GOP to continue to do that. So, and here's the other beautiful thing on this, John, is you're talking about state delegates. These are informed voters, and I don't think that it's missed by them as to kind of what's at stake and what we're voting on. So they can come and say, we believe with Rob Axon that we need to make sure that we keep these powerful people happy. In which case, vote for Rob and continue to do that. It might be the right thing. Or they'll come in and say, we believe that those people have overplayed their hand and it's time to put the grassroots back in the position of power. If that's the case, then vote for me. And I won't cry any tears if I don't win this election. I don't think Rob would either, honestly. So not a lot of animosity between the two candidates. There's a lot of animosity that gets spread around out in the field, but it's like, just decide what it is you want, and then let's vote for that on May 17th.
Okay, so what, and I think you've made this, but I just kind of want to tick them off. If you're if you get to be voted as GOP chair, not tick them off as in people off, but bullet point those things that you would really like to help effectuate change for. And what does the chair have the ability to, does the chair have the ability to say, I'm the executive officer and this is what we're going to do? Or what does that chair supposed to do within the GOP?
So in my mind, the Utah GOP in Utah is an 800-pound gorilla. And we've been convinced that because we have so much power, we better not use any of it. We better just stay docile and stay in our corner. Election integrity is probably the number one issue that comes to mind when I think about what the GOP should be doing. We should be making sure that we have actual elections where candidates have a chance, which is the whole purpose of forming a political party, is to help influence and be able to put good candidates, the candidates that align with the Republican platform, into office so that they're actually making the policy decisions. So it's interesting to me when I see the party, bending the knee to Spencer Cox, who's saying, we're right-wing extremists and we need to disagree better. Anytime a tyrant tells the people below him, you've got to disagree better, it's like, while I whip you, I don't want to hear any back. It's so blatant to me in my experience. So being the 800-pound gorilla, flexing our muscle, saying that we're going to have fair elections, and then all of those things start to ripple out to being able to affect the races of people who are running for the legislature. We saw, I think it was Idaho, one of the states, I should have looked this up, but they took away the Republican affiliation of 9 elected officials. Says you don't vote like Republicans, you're not Republicans, and they dropped them from the Republican Party. That's flexing your muscle. That's saying, if you're not going to be a Republican, that's fine. Go do your thing, but you're not going to do it with an R by your name. You're not going to exploit the party. So that can have a lot of ripple effect.
Boy, wouldn't that be nice if we had Republicans actually be and act and vote as Republicans? And if they don't effectuate Republican ideas, that we say, hey, you can no longer have that R by your name, because frankly, most of Utah, once you win the primary and you get the R by your name,
right,
you're getting voted in. There are a few seats within the legislature and a few seats within the and when I say the legislature, I'm talking about within the state legislature and the state Senate. So the state house and the state Senate, there's a few seats where that's not the case,
right?
But it's very few.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so if the purpose of a party is to influence things, we've been convinced that we need to tone it down or something. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but what I came across on Grok, on AI, 925,000 registered Republicans in Utah compared to about 230,000 registered Democrats, less than a fourth. So the threat to Utah is not Democrats, it's Republicans. And it's those Republicans who act like Democrats, who have recognized that I can't get elected, with a D by my name. So I'm going to put an R by my name. And SB 54, the signature route thing, has allowed, Bernie Sanders could come and run as a Republican in Utah, and there would be nothing to stop him. And if he had enough money, he would, blast the airwaves, and would end up with him as an elected official.
What else would you like to see changed if you're elected GOP chair?
Well, what I say is it's the Stephen Covey thing. Things that matter most must not be at the mercy of things that matter least. The state GOP can go out and campaign for candidates. They can do that. They can go campaign for Trump. They can go to Nevada and Arizona, all of those things. But if they don't address the apparatus that they are there to safeguard and protect, then they're not doing the things that matter most. They're leaving the elections vulnerable. So going in and saying we're going to get out of ERIC, the Electronic Records Information Center. All the red states have already withdrawn from ERIC, but Utah stays in it. We're not going to allow this outside money to come in and affect our. Yeah.
Okay. Real quick question: Is Utah the only Republican state
I believe
so. Still in ERIC? I believe
they are. Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Yeah. There might be a state that's still in it that has a Republican governor, but we're the only, truly red state that has stayed in ERIC. And this is an organization that was funded heavily by Mark Zuckerberg and the Tides Foundation, which is George Soros's foundation, the Democracy Now! Fund, and along with CTCL and CEIR, these organizations, tons of money that was flowing in. I ran a bill in 2021 as a legislator to say, we're not going to take any outside money that influences our elections in Utah. And you would have thought that I had, shot somebody in the town square, because it's like, oh, Phil Lyman is, creating all this division, creating all these problems and spouting these lies. And Deidre Henderson, I think it was Spencer Cox, said they're playing a very dangerous game. It's like, this is not a dangerous game to talk about election integrity. So, what I would do as the Utah GOP, really just let's be an honest election. Now, if that means that the GOP has to conduct their own primary election, and this is what the legislature has said and what the lieutenant governor's office said, is basically, if you don't do what we say, then we're not going to pay for the primary election that we conduct for you. And it's like, oh, so you mean we wouldn't have to be in a month-long primary with universal mail-in ballots? We would just go to our precincts, would vote in person, count it at the precinct level, turn that in, have our results that night. It'd be a fair election. So I am all about the GOP conducting its own primary election. And it would cost a little bit of money, but we've got the apparatus. Again, the apparatus is in place. So I'd like to see the GOP conduct their own primary election. Basically, we would let the lieutenant governor know who our candidate is, instead of the other way around, which right now the lieutenant governor lets us know who our candidate is going to be. It's not the way it should be.
Well, I would say this: it makes a lot of sense for a private group, a private party, private group, to have its own private elections, and they choose who they're going to have. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I guess there was one other thing I was going to say on that, and that's the data. The Republican Party should be the king of data with all the Republicans, all the registered Republicans. We should know who they are, where they are. We should be in contact with them. They should be following the GOP on all the social media platforms. We should be communicating with them. And then when somebody wants to run for office, they should see the GOP as an influencer, as something that when they go and they get the nomination, that the GOP is going to really act by giving them access to really high quality data. That's what drives elections in this day and age. And what we found is that if you're connected to the right people, you get really good data. If you're somehow out of sorts, then you get really bad data. and it's selective and it's deliberate, and I'd love to see, that thumb off the scale and say, hey, in the GOP, number one, we have a mechanism to keep imposters out of the GOP, or at least keep them from gaining power. And number two, those that are following the platform, who are truly dedicated, they've got access to world-class data and an influence organization that can help them.
Well, another issue that I have with the lack of having the Republican Party behind us, like you're talking about, is right now, who do we have that is pulling those strings? Well, whoever can pay the most. Spencer Cox has some really good backers within his own family. Has the Cox
Centricom.
It's not Centricom behind him. I almost said the Cox Communication, but it's not. It's Centricom. And then right now, Gail Miller really supports him. And so does the other Jazz owner, really support him. And both of those individuals won a baseball stadium. And what wound up happening? Now, if you go to the average Utah that I've been talking to, hey, do you think billionaires should be given at taxpayer funds a baseball stadium, or do you think they should have to pay for their baseball stadium? Everybody, when I pose the question that way, everybody goes, billionaires should be paying it for themselves.
It's a viable business model. They could likely do it. If they couldn't do it, then it probably shouldn't be done. But the idea that, greasing a few skids here and there will get you $1 billion more in your pocket than otherwise, that's really a problem.
Well, I look at it this way. Larry H. Miller and the Utah Jazz have done just fine, receiving very little.
See, and here's the
money.
sad part of that. I'm such a Larry Miller fan. I read his book. I watched him, build his businesses. I love business. I love success. I love, to see people just really, and especially when they come from kind of rags to riches. And, John Huntsman Sr., another, just an impressive philanthropist and a business person. It's like, keep it pure, don't come to the government and ask them to fund these things. And if you're the government, help to keep that pure by saying, no, that's not how it works here. We love you. We appreciate you in Utah, but no, we're not building you a stadium. That's not the proper role of government. It all comes back to that, the proper role of government and consent of the governed and all of these things. We're not a democracy that votes, ourselves games and circuses and bread and circuses.
I was just having the same thoughts.
Yeah.
Bread and circus. Boy, they're providing that for us, aren't they?
And if you go to the masses and say, well, what do you want? Do you want stadiums? Chances are you're going to get a bunch of people saying, yeah, that's what we want. But you have to have, kind of the founding fathers built a system. I mean, they could have enriched themselves, but they tried to create a system that was tyrant proof, that pirates couldn't take it over and turn it into a tool of plunder. And so when we see those things kind of happening, it should be a huge red flag and say, hey, that's wrong. That's not ethical. That's not what we do. And you would think in Utah, of all places, that we would have a firm footing. But what you find is, because of our culture, because of some of the things, the dynamics of Utah, we're almost more susceptible to being duped by schemers. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would say it's very much true. We want to believe it's part of our culture that once you're in Utah, we want to believe you're genuine. Now, it used to be very much part of our culture. If you were not part of Utah, boy, we did not trust you at all, right? Now those walls have been beat down enough that I would say is not as strong as it used to be. But boy, that used to be, I would say, a truism that we need to get back to. If you're not from inside Utah, if you're not part of Utah, if you're not in Utah, we should question you, especially the whole idea of having money from outside Utah, do you think that money from outside, do you think money from New York City really wants to have Utah values?
Right.
No, they
Right.
don't.
And the beautiful thing, and this is a hypothesis that I'm testing in all different kinds of ways, but people are tired of being lied to, and they've woken up in the last 4 years, through COVID and through a myriad of other things. Now with Doge and just exposing all the stuff that's going on. I was talking to somebody today, and it's like, the fact that you can get into Congress with almost a zero net worth and come out 8 years later with $50 million net worth seems to coincide with a national debt for a country that has almost unlimited resources and technology and innovation, yet we have $37 trillion in debt. Where does all that money go? Well, apparently it goes in the pockets, at least a good chunk of it goes in the pockets of our politicians and our lobbyists. And it's a
We have politicians sitting on very well paid for boards.
and investment portfolios that outperform the greatest investment people in the country. And it's like, it's not right. It really is turned into a tool of plunder. And that's, I get it. I get why pirates plunder. I understand their motivation, and I get why people on the other side fight that. What I really don't get is why good, honest people in the middle decide that they're going to side with the tyranny side. But they're gaslit into it, and pretty soon you hear good people saying, "Oh, but we're not going to be able to raise money if Phil Lyman's elected," or they're going to take the caucus away from us completely if we don't give them what they want. Or with the federal lands, it's like we got to close down all of our energy production, or the Biden administration is going to come in and shut us down. And so you get people just capitulating and propitiating to kind of sacrificing their children to the gods in appeasement. It's really interesting to watch, and I think that's government in a nutshell. And it's not a recent development, but kind of what is a recent development in the United States is people waking up and saying, we're just tired of being lied to. We're not going to do it again. And that's my hypothesis, is that we're about to see a massive change in Utah.
Why don't we have a Doge here in Utah? Why isn't that being
well? We do in
about?
the form of Tina Cannon, our new state auditor. She is a bulldog. I don't know if you know her, if you've had her on the show, but Tina, to me, she is a Utah form of Doge, and I hope she stays that way. We've had decent people in that office before, but by the end, they're running cover. They're like, oh, I'm Doge, therefore I'm going to put out a report that exonerates government from any wrongdoing, and you have to believe me because I'm the state auditor, or I'm the Speaker of the House, or I'm the legislative audit, running cover instead of exposing. But yeah, sorry, I'm rambling, but Tina Cannon she's the real deal. I think she's amazing.
Yes, I'm glad you reminded me. She promised that she'd be willing to come on pretty much whenever I asked. All right. So, folks, you are listening to us here on KMMU Main Street Media, Utah. We are streaming live on X, Rumble, YouTube, and our website, kmmu.org. Thanks for listening. Also, should you want to call in and ask Phil Lyman a question, you can call 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134. Feel free to call in and ask him a question. All right. So let's hit a few things quickly on I've been listening to some things out there. Phil, you're very divisive. You're trying to divide the state. You're trying to, hurt Republicans. You're kind of one of those wacky extreme Republicans, in fact.
Thank you.
And our call screener is really lonely at the moment, is what he's telling me. So folks, call 385-899-2134. And some people are saying Phil Lyman, we haven't proved that Governor Cox didn't get his signatures. So I want you to hit that. And then the last thing that we want to cover along these lines probably is if anything you want to cover on the Republican platform, or if you've covered everything so far you want to. Then I got some other things in general that I want to get to. So just so folks, you know that we're going to try to get to this before he needs to go. We want to get to what in the state are you seeing that you like? What are you saying that you don't? If you were the governor, what would you be doing different? I want to hit Trump, and I also want to hit some of the judicial and just issues with plain old people here in Utah. And I'm gonna preface it this: the federal government had to hold two officials, high officials within the state of Utah, accountable. It was the federal government that did it. It should have been the state. We should have known
100%.
what's going on. And I will tell my story about the Utah County Sheriff's deputy telling me about something that happened, and why they went to federal authorities and they weren't going to the state or going to a county. So let's hit. So first of all, there are many people that are telling me you're a wacko and you're divisive. You're an extremist, wacko, and divisive. Those are two terms that I've heard used for you directly, and I've been like, apparently you
thank
don't
you.
know Phil, but Phil.
So, I've pushed for the signatures, verifying Cox's signatures. We found out that there is a problem. They prosecuted 11 people as a result of signature fraud. So even though the Supreme Court says I'm ridiculous for bringing it up, and the lieutenant governor says I'm, creating distrust and all these things, there's a problem with the signatures. And I said it before, and I'll continue saying it until we get to the bottom of that. It's not divisive. It's not intended to be divisive.
It shouldn't be divisive. If you found out the signatures weren't collected properly, something
they
should
say
be done about that.
Universal mail-in ballot has increased voter turnout dramatically. And I say that's true. It has in some precincts well over 100%, which I took that, and I've got the data. I took it to the lieutenant governor. I showed her in Salt Lake County some precincts that were over 100% turnout. That means more people voted than are on the voter rolls. And she said, well, how is that even possible? In a really indignant way. And I said, that's the right question. Let's find out. Let's do and instead of that, we get billboards up and down I-15 saying that we're the gold standard, and Phil Lyman is playing a dangerous game, and we're spreading lies and distrust. And we've got to, what did she say? Doubt the doubters, don't doubt the government, which is like backwards of anything that our founding fathers would tell us.
You know what? Stalin would have loved that statement. So would have Lenin, Mao. That. Let me put it this way: I guarantee you, those words would have never come out of George Washington's mouth. Would it have come out of Thomas Jefferson's, Thomas Paine? No.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer that. No. But Stalin? So
all of these things weigh in the balances, and there's the scales, and it's like, is this going to go this way or is this going to go the other way? I'm not divisive. I am a truth teller. I am a question asker. If I can't get the actual data, then I make an educated guess, which is usually based on facts. And people in power find that threatening, and their retort is to come out and say, it's the ad hominem attacks. It's like, oh, Phil's mean. Phil's, he's divisive. He can't raise money. He's, combs his hair weird. He's whatever. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I'm at this point, John, after going through all of it, I on an individual level, those things really don't affect me. I feel like I've kind of moved past all of that rhetoric. And now I'm just looking at the party and saying, we could do better. Utah could do better. And I'm going to put forward this alternative. So yeah, the signatures, the voter rolls, the outside money funding, none of that's intended to be divisive. When we brought it up in October of 2021 to the committee there, I talked about all of the outside money and the influence that it has on our elections, the negative influence. And the first response from one of the representatives, how dare you impugn the good name of our clerks? It's like, I'm not impugning the good name of our clerks. I'm talking about the system that Utah has bought into that's affecting our data. Anyway, he knew I wasn't impugning the clerks. He knew I wasn't going after it. Just like Spencer Cox, when I said Utah is a sanctuary state and we need to stop doing these things. How dare Phil Lyman criticize our sheriffs? It's like, I'm the friend of the sheriffs. I'm the one who stands up for sheriffs to you, Spencer Cox, and it has for forever. I've stood up for the clerks to the lieutenant governor's office. So
I want to say it was in ICE. Was it? I can't remember if it was Homeland Security or
nice.
ICE that
Yeah.
said we
Yeah.
were a sanctuary state until he was called in to meet with and bend the knee in front of Spencer Cox.
And then you find out, we are actively human trafficking illegal aliens into Utah in the dead of night. And so all that stuff is like, it's not divisive to tell the truth. It may be uncomfortable, and the backlash might be, to accuse someone of being divisive. But anyway, I know I'm not a divisive person. I do believe that the GOP is looking for its base, trying to find out, well, what do we stand for? Do we stand for DEI? Do we stand for immigration? Do we stand for just being nice all the time? Or do we have a platform that talks about state sovereignty and individual freedom and parenthood and personhood and all of those things and I think if you have a party that stands up and says, this is the platform, this is what we stand for, and I'm going to stand for that as the GOP, I think you're going to see Republicans have a revival of sorts. And I think it's high time that we have a revival back to that platform. So, yeah.
Well stated, sir. Well stated. I want to get so had you been elected governor? Had you been able to take the oath? What would you be doing differently now?
Water policy is major. I've seen the state just commandeer control of all the state's water in the name of saving the Great Salt Lake or drought or whatever else. It's as if the legislature discovered that water was important here a few years ago and decided it was so important they had to take control of all of it, because our grandparents and parents who built these irrigation systems, apparently they didn't really understand water that well. So, but the legislature does. And the developers, real estate developers who control.
There happens to be a lot of real estate developers who happen to be in the legislature who want access. And whenever they need to build something for one of their big projects, they happen to need water.
Water is king in Utah. And so honestly, right off the bat, I would be looking to divest control of water back to the people, because it's like the 10th Amendment. It says the rights not given to the federal government are reserved to the state or to the people. It's not saying one or the other, either the state or the people. No, it just so happens that the people are the state. So when we say the state of Utah owns its water, it means the people own the water. That's the people in San Juan County who put together the San Juan Water Conservancy District or the Blanding Irrigation Company. Those shareholders own that water. It belongs to them. It doesn't belong to the state engineer. It doesn't belong to the legislature. It belongs to the people, and control of that is always dispersed. It's always dangerous when you start, concentrating control. So that's just one thing, but it's kind of endemic of the whole problem is the centralization of power. Whether we're talking about, favoring businesses. We like this business. They donate a lot of money to our campaign. Therefore, they're going to get all these government contracts. I was driving down on the Wasatch Front. There's a big new development of housing right on I-15. And Jody said, who would build all of the housing on I-15? And the answer is government would do that, because if it was developers who simply were, in a free market system, they would build, off of I-15, where it's more lucrative. But you get government involved, and pretty soon you get really bad decisions.
So where at on I-15?
It's right down there in Sandy. Yeah,
Sandy Draper,
probably
area.
Draper.
Those big buildings that are being built right on the west side. Yeah,
but
I found that pretty interesting.
Point of the Mountain, the whole Draper facility is like, when they said they're going to relocate the prisons, I thought, oh well, the state should sell State should sell that property off and see what the market does. Well, no, that's not. The state is going to retain that property, and we're going to get into the development business, and we're going to make, a $7 billion investment into a 15-minute city at Point of the Mountain and all of these things. It's like, wait a second, that's not government. That's not what government is supposed to do.
Wait a minute. I was reliably told by Spencer Cox actually Spencer Cox reliably told Jason Preston there is no such thing as a 15-minute cities, and he's a liar for saying that. Speaking of,
it's funny because on Google Maps at the time, it said something about the Point development, 15-minute city, and of course, then we saw after that, Spencer was speaking on 15-minute cities.
Before he said Jason Preston was a liar and pounded him on his chest with his fist.
There are some days, John, honestly, it's like, can I just please walk away from politics? And I have a happy life. I have beautiful kids and grandkids, and I just they really are there. They're like everything. They're so special, and then I get so obsessed with politics to the point that I forget about my granddaughter's piano recital and things like this. And I think I am letting things that matter most be at the mercy of things that matter least. But then I pull around and say, you know what, this really is important. Policy is really important. So yeah, water, 15-minute cities, divesting, pushing back to the counties. I love county level government. And if I were the governor, I'd be pushing economic development back to the counties, back to the commissioners. I'd be cutting spending dramatically. I would get rid of the tax on Social Security in Utah. Obviously you need the legislature, but that would be a big push. I would focus back on the productive industries, energy production in Utah. We're greatly blessed, and we could fund so much of the state with severance taxes if we'd stand up for ourselves there. Tell the federal government to pound sand when they come and tell us we've got to shut down our coal-fired power plants and things like that. And I'm sure it would be contentious, but it would also be very authentic and very, very real, and certainly no personal enrichment agenda.
Well, imagine if we had a governor that said, we're going to run this coal, and this coal, that has been stopped from us using, we're going to go ahead and use it. We're going to go to the refineries at the Point of the Mountain and say, hey, do you want to increase your production? We're going to say, let's build some refineries out in Uinta County. Let's go build some refineries and start pumping gasoline out of here like crazy, because I'm sick and tired of Utah being one of the most expensive places for gasoline when we got tons of oil in the ground.
I started the Yellow Cake Caucus when I got in the legislature. Never missed a week of legislative session on the Yellow Cake Caucus from the very first week. And the Yellow Cake Caucus, kind of true to its name, yellow cake is the refined uranium, and it's about energy production. But it's the caucus was all about energy production. We had Dr. Mehmet from BYU come up and talk about thorium. Thorium, could power the whole Utah could power the whole planet for thousands of years just with the supply they have in Utah. And I said, well, instead of being a sanctuary state for illegal immigration, what if we were a sanctuary state for nuclear energy development? And we just tell the federal government, we're not going to follow your guidelines. We're going to research and do our own stuff here in Utah. Well, he said they've got on thorium. They went to Idaho National Labs and said, we need to do this testing facility. It doesn't have any radioactive element to it, but we've got to do the testing. But because it's connected to thorium, it's got to run through Idaho National Labs. They said they could do it for $12,000 of materials, but $80 million in permitting fees and 20 years to do. So
why did we have to go to Idaho?
Because Nuclear Energy Commission is saying, oh, this is nuclear, so you've got to go through us, essentially. And I said, I brought up the thing. I said, well, why doesn't Utah become a sanctuary state for nuclear energy development? I thought it was pretty brilliant and innovative.
Very,
But then as I looked into it,
very innovative.
someone else had already beat us to the punch. I might have talked to you about this, but can you guess which state beat us to the punch? I'm saying, pound sand, federal government, we're going to do this ourselves in our own state.
I'm going to
Texas.
guess.
God bless Texas.
I don't remember talking about it.
They've already said, no, for Texas, we are going to develop nuclear energy, and we're going to do it within the confines of our own state. No interstate commerce, no need for us to go get permission from the Nuclear Energy Commission. Utah needs to follow suit on that. But yeah, you're right. It was Texas. So energy is huge. Water is huge. Utah can like just dominate the West. They can dominate in our energy development. We have such bright people and great industries and natural resources. So that would be an exciting thing, and pay our bills that way. We have the land management stuff that's going on with the state institutional trust lands, the school sections, so poorly managed and so bureaucratic and self-serving to people that are on the inside. That needs to stop. We just need to get back to good management of our state trust lands. They could fund our schools. All of this stuff. Everybody in Utah is used to seeing their property taxes go up by 10 or 15% a year. If it's only 10%, they're usually happy, because a lot of them go up 35%, 40%, or double in a year's time. And then at the same time, they're watching all of this development. And there's in this morass of why is everything going up so exorbitant? Why is government doing all these things on the one hand, and I'm paying so much more, and then we're tearing down coal-fired power plants, where it's like insanity. The inmates have taken over the asylum, and it doesn't have to be that way. A little common sense.
The moneymakers are paying their ways to get what they want and doing a great job being in the state legislature.
So going back to the governor's race, early on, the governor sent out a list of these companies have endorsed me for governor, and he gave a list of about 15 large corporations. You could take that list and go and look at the government contracts that have been awarded, and all of those were receiving millions and millions of dollars. And I thought, how tacky to even post something like that, to say, look at all these companies that support me. Oh, and they're doing it not because they think I'm going to do the best thing for the state, but I'm giving them millions and millions and millions of dollars. And that's what Utah has become, is a pay to play state, government that picks winners and losers. And anyone that wants to mess with that formula, that equation, is a huge threat to those who have paid to play and are doing it. But we've got to get rid of that. It's so destructive to a state like Utah.
What else would you like to see done here in the state of Utah?
Well, let's see. On the personhood, parenthood level, education, getting rid of the state board of education would be a godsend. Now, you've got the Utah State School Board, which I think could still function, but all of your local school districts essentially are just part of a machine that enforces the bureaucracy. You've got the parent councils of each school. And what I would love to see is, an apparatus at the top of the state school board, and then an allocation to all of these parent councils around the state. So instead of, what have we got, 40 school districts, you'd have, 2,200 parent councils that would be receiving that money and being able to help direct, under the supervision and guidance of the state and the financial oversight. But that would put parents back in charge of their kids' education. Now, yeah.
So help me understand a little bit more what that would look like.
So you've got your school districts. So, you go to Alpine School District, and Alpine School District oversees all of these schools. And within each one of those schools, there's a parent school council. And I'm probably using the wrong term, escapes me right now, but it's a parent-driven council. And they're supposed to basically direct the school board on what happens in that school. Well, of course, the school board doesn't they become more of an advisory council, which you know how advisory councils go. It's like, hey, thanks for showing up. Here's lunch. Now we'll go back to do whatever we were doing. And the school boards are backing up the state school board, and you've got this bureaucracy, and it's all designed to just build as much money as they can get out. And you see administrative costs, far surpassing the costs of teachers' wages. But if parents were in charge of that, if parents were saying, this is how we want the money spent in our school, you would have better paid teachers. You'd have none of the garbage that's going on from, this agenda that comes from basically from globalists that gets pushed down through, the DEI and the SEL and all this nonsense that gets pushed into our curriculum. And it's all driven by money. And anyway, sorry, I keep kind of complicating this, but that would be just fund the schools based on what the parents of those schools want. I think you could honestly eliminate the 40 school districts in favor of and I think it's like 2,200 parent councils. It'd be a beautiful system.
Well, I'm going to pull up my calculator real quick. Now, this is a number, I want to say it was Alpine School District, and I want to say this is a number almost probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a decade ago, that each student was getting, I believe it was $7,300 per student to Alpine School District. Would you say that's a fair number to use currently, or even maybe on the low
bill
side?
That passed a couple of years ago in the legislature. So I'm drawing a blank on it too, but I think they were giving $8,000 per student to individual families that opted to take basically privatize that experience. So yeah, 7,300, 8,000.
So let's just use the number 7,300. Let's multiply that by, I would say the average classroom size is probably, do you have any idea what that might be?
23, 26.
I bet you it's much
you're probably
higher
right.
than that.
Yeah.
But let's just go with the number I want to say. Let's just say, let's use a number of 24 times 24. That is $175,200 for 1 year. So the folks, how did I do the math? $7,300 times 24 students. Okay, so roughly the school systems get $7,300, and I think that you agree that number is probably low, correct?
Yeah. You can ask Rock.
So times 24 students, that's $175,200. You could almost build a new schoolroom every 5 years, and you could pay a teacher's salary somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 on that money. So let's just say 75,000 a year, 75,000 times 5, that's 375,000. Even at today's dollars, you could tear down and build a schoolroom, a building the same size of a schoolroom every 5 years, right? Okay, so I'm being a little ridiculous. Let's say every 10 years. I mean, we're talking, so that means you're probably paying teachers somewhere in the neighborhood of $70,000 a year. We could get them to $70,000 a year. Now, it'd be interesting. Do you have an idea of the average compensation for a teacher per year when you include pay, and all the other benefits they receive?
Average for a teacher is with benefits included is probably around 80. Some much higher than that, but I can ask Grok that too. By the way, I asked Grok, and it's 26.6 is the average class size, with 21.6 for elementary classes, 29.9 at the higher level. So we're pretty close on our guessing there. So
I'm going to go 7,300 times 26. That's 189,800. And because I was guessing low, let's just call it 190,000. So I could pay a teacher 190,000 a year, or not 190, excuse me, 100,000 a year. The whole thing. I think on average, I bet you that's going to be doing pretty well. So 100,000, and you're looking up with Gronk, you're trying to get that $100,000 a year. We probably would build a new schoolroom, every 15 to 20 years. That leaves a lot of money left over. And it might cost 300,000 to build a school room. You could probably do it for less, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's that. Yeah, there's a lot of money going into our schools.
Okay. So then you put in the top level, then you bring in a bunch of computers. The great thing about like Apple and all these different companies that give computers, they actually are leasing those to the schoolrooms. You have top level computers, you have the top level books. Where is all that money going? Where is all the money going? And you can still have your football. You can still have your basketball. You can still have your debate. You can still have 4-H. You can do all those things. Where is that money
So
going?
this is really, really dangerous to talk about.
I'm being divisive.
Administration. If you go in and you look at administrative costs in the schools and you just graph it out, you show that administrative costs are increasing much faster than teacher compensation.
And not only that, when I go to Nebo School District, when I go to their district offices, it's almost like I'm walking into a law firm's offices. Those are a lot nicer. A lot nicer than the average.
And here's the thing.
school.
So you talk like this, and if you're a politician, you get the administrative people saying, this is dangerous for us. They're telling some of the things that are going on, and they turn on a person like me and they say, we've got to go against Phil Lyman. And then they activate their UEA, and they contact their teachers, and we need to, oppose Phil Lyman. We need to go against Phil Lyman. And it's like, I'm the teacher's best friend. I really am. But because I'm not the administrator's best friend, then they convince the teachers, you've got to turn on Phil Lyman, and we've got to make sure that he doesn't get elected. And this is, most of them are intelligent. And at least in my district down here on the south end of the state, you go around, you visit with people, and they kind of see the logic of what you're doing. But it's a shame the amount of power that the UEA holds. And that said, I defend their right to be an association and to have the freedom of association and not be regulated by the legislature in terms of collective bargaining. Even though I disagree with everything they're trying to do, I agree with their right to do that. So, anyway, that's where we find ourselves in this difficult position of saying, wait a second, I'm advocating for you, not against you, but because somebody got threatened, then they spread the narrative. It turns into a witch hunt.
Well, that's the whole thing. Their power, unfortunately, is being questioned by people like you,
Right.
Phil. The mainstream power that is in the rhinos is being threatened by people like you, Phil, and that's why they're worried. Okay, so real quickly, folks, I just want to take a breath and restate, folks, you are listening to Talk with John on KMMU. I have Phil Lyman joining me right now here on Main Street Media, Utah. We are live on X, Rumble, and YouTube, as well as you can go to our website, kmmu.org, and you can join us there. Now, folks, for a few more minutes, we've got our lonely call screener. You can call in and ask Phil, or you can call in and tell your host, John, how crazy and dumb he is, and ask a good question to Phil Lyman. 385-899-2134. You can call in at 385-899-2134. We will have Dwayne, our call screener, here for just a little bit longer. All right, so I wanted to mention that. Phil, that's why they're worried about you. It's because you're willing to say these things. You're and there are people within the state legislature. There are state people within the power of the state government, from the elected positions down, that fear someone that's willing to say, you know what? We need to become a power sanctuary state. Well, John, that's ridiculous. Why would that be a problem? Because then people start losing. If we had tons of energy that you've talked about here on the show, getting our own nuclear energy, not like nuclear like Chernobyl, but like micro. In fact, I'll let you talk a little bit about them, but they're micro little units that would power 1,000 houses, extremely safe. You don't have to worry about it blowing up. And on top of that, you know what the wonderful thing is? This is something you didn't mention that you've mentioned to me before. I forget, it's thermal or whatever it is. I forget the name. But the cool thing about it is when it degrades, you know, you don't have to go stick it in some mountain in Nevada somewhere. You use it for medical devices.
Yeah, that's thorium. Thorium, the only way you can get these medical isotopes they are truly God's gift to mankind, and they only come from spent thorium reactors. It's like you can't create these isotopes in any other way than to burn up thorium in a nuclear reactor type process. And thorium, you can't make a bomb out of it. You can't. It's not the same kind of nuclear, like you say, like Chernobyl. In fact, it was around. Thorium has been around for as long as the uranium side of this. And I got to be careful because I'm a uranium guy in a uranium county, and I love uranium. So I'm not dissing coal. I'm not dissing uranium. Just saying thorium was developing at the same time. And the only reason that the United States chose the uranium U-24 or whatever was because you could use it for weapons, and that was very appealing at a time when we're in a Cold War, and so it developed. It's like, okay, we'll have amazing power and nuclear weapons. Thorium didn't provide that. China just opened up the first ever in the world thorium power plant. It's online now. It's producing. Now in China, you can build a nuclear power plant in a matter of a couple of years. In the United States, you better plan on about 40 years, and most of that will be spent in permitting. Yeah, and in court. So they've got their first thorium reactor. They said that they've got enough thorium stored in China to power China for 100,000 years. And people say, "Oh, that's impossible." Well, sadly, it's not impossible. It's like, go do the math. This is an amazing technology with a byproduct of medical isotopes. The model that we came up with when I was on the Yellowcake Caucus is the value in this is the medical isotopes. That's where the money should be derived from. The energy would be the byproduct of creating medical isotopes. So instead of saying we're going to produce nuclear energy, it's like, no, we're going to produce life-saving isotopes. The byproduct is unlimited free energy for Utah. A little bit idealistic, but not out of the realm of plausibility.
And your power is much closer to you. Your power is produced much closer to you. We don't have to worry about brownouts and blackouts as we've worried about before. Now, every once in a while, a power line might get dug into or hit or something along those lines. But boy, wouldn't that be wonderful if we had a whole lot less brownouts and so forth and blackouts? And we're starting to have those. We had here in
Utah was signed on with Idaho National Labs to basically be the recipients of the first commercial scale small form nuclear reactor, and UAMPS. I can't remember exactly what that stands for, but it's the Utah Association of Power Companies. Signed the contract to basically receive that first power plant. The problem was, again, because of all the regulation and everything else, the cost of that plant kept going up and up and up. So the companies, rightfully so, are looking at the cost per kilowatt hour, and it was just getting too expensive. So as soon as they started to drop out, it was just like trying to catch a falling knife. the bottom fell out from under that. Broke my heart. It broke the heart of the people at UAMPS that they had to pull the plug on being the recipient of that small form reactor. But I mean, that's the reality of the economics of it. The tragedy is that it's artificially expensive. In a free market world, you go build those reactors all day long and sell them, and the price of energy would drop considerably.
So there's a couple things that I want to still talk about, and I know that you need to leave in time so you can go to. You already had a previous engagement at 6:30, so I want to make sure that I honor you being able to get to that on time. When do you need to
By
leave?
about 6 o'clock. So.
Okay. All right. So we won't go past 6. And if you need to leave at 5:55, we can get that done. All right. I know I could get that done. At least I'm pretty sure. I might keep you to 5:56. Who knows? But there's a couple things that I still want to talk to you about. I still want to talk to you about Trump, and a big issue that is bothering me here in the state of Utah. Why in the world am I not hearing A.G. Brown saying, I'm going after this, I'm going to lead out, and I'm going to take care of the situation where we've got a judge and a fire chief up in Tremont who have traffic, at the very least, have child porn and stuff, and it sounds like there may be worse issues that happen to be, the two individuals happen to be male, happen to know one another, and happen to be intimately connected, more than just trading information, trading images and videos. Here's the problem that I have. How did that get to us? How did we find out about it? It was the federal government that brought that to us. Okay, so something back when David Leavitt was the Utah County attorney.
Yes,
Am I
yeah,
using the
Utah
proper
County
term?
attorney.
He was the Utah County attorney. This is one guy that I got wrong. I was for him because of everybody that was against him. When I started questioning that was when Sheriff Mike Smith was going against him. And then I talked to a couple of his deputies. His deputies came up and talked to me and said, Mr. Delegate, let me tell you why I'm not for him. He goes, right now, we've got child porn cases that are not being tackled. I've got many dockets of child porn, children that are being sexually abused, and I cannot get him to do anything about that. I have to give it to the FBI and the federal officials. My question, the first thing I want to know is, how did that information about that judge happen? Was it actually local law enforcement that gave? So this is something I don't know, and I don't know if it's known. Did local law enforcement get this information, try to give it to the local county or the local state, and it wouldn't handle? And I was also told that the state wasn't handling it either properly. So they gave it to the FBI. If I was Spencer Cox, or if I was A.G. Brown, Attorney General Brown, I would be trumpeting from the rooftops. I'm going to find every trafficker of child porn. I'm going to do everything legally that I possibly can to find. I have a friend of mine who was on a raid several years ago. He wasn't on the raid. He observed the raid in Richfield of there were a bunch of Johns in Richfield that were that children were being trafficked at. So sex slavery. And they were youth. And he goes, John, I was there watching the video because I wasn't local law enforcement. He knew local law enforcement individuals. And he goes, there were a number of individuals that were caught in this sting. And he goes, John, if it's happening in Richfield, where it's happening everywhere in Utah. That is something that I would come out and say, let me put the fear of God in you. You best move out of the state of Utah. You best stop right now. This is the greatest stain on the country and on the nation. Now, I also believe, folks, you're going to hate to hear this, Go watch We Are the People and what they are saying. I believe that there's even satanic ritual abuse. We won't get into that. But we do know that there is child trafficking. It's happening at the border. Those children are being brought in buses to the state of Utah. We know that that has happened. Spencer Cox didn't stop that. Why are we not? And folks, just because you don't know about it, you should know about it. You should learn about it. But if you know anything about it at all, you will be held accountable. I'm afraid I'm being held accountable by God. And if a civil war had to be fought to stop slavery, what is the penalty if we don't? What is going to be the penalty on the United States for not stopping that?
Do you want me to?
Your thoughts?
Yeah.
That was it. I know it's
Well,
heavy, but I'm like,
I went to Texas last week to meet with Laura Logan. I don't know if you remember Laura Logan, but international correspondent, fearless warrior, and it was on the human trafficking stuff. And I mean, we talk about these things from a policy standpoint, and it's kind of like talking about abortion, in terms of policy. It's like the grief and the pain gets lost in the grievance and the policy. And I mean, yeah, there are groups with human trafficking, and they have prostitutes, for lack of a better word, that are baby factories, and their job is to get pregnant, have babies. And this happens. It happens in America. In fact, America is the largest consumer of this type of stuff. These babies are raped to death. And if that's happening in our society, and we want to sanitize it in a policy discussion, all I can say is the second coming has got to be close. It's got to happen. God help us for the things that we talk about in a policy format that should be like fought head on. And you and I have talked about this a little bit. I know there's a controversial individual in Utah, Tim Ballard. The way that the timing of his takedown, the accusations against him, clearly politically motivated. I fear that pulling him out of what he was working on, and I could be duped, I could be wrong, but everything tells me that by him being neutralized in Utah and around the country, facilitated the continuing rape of children. And
okay, so I want to mention something. So I was at I think it was the week before or 2 weeks before, Eagle Forum had him come and do a presentation. And at that meeting, at that Eagle Forum, he said that, I want to say it was one of the presidents, and it was a female president, I believe Castro was her last name, of one of the Central or South American countries, was going to be going to the White House and talking to Biden. And Tim Ballard, she had asked Tim Ballard to come with her to talk to him about that. And before that meeting happened, I mean, it was like the next week. I want to say it was the next week. If it wasn't the next week, it was the week after that. And this meeting was supposed to happen within less than a month. She was going to go and say, President Biden, where's my children? Where's my missing children? That meeting didn't happen with Tim Ballard, and I don't know that meeting happened at all because that came out about Tim Ballard. It was very, very, very interesting timing. And let's just say that all the accusations are correct, which I don't believe all the accusations are correct. I don't believe them. In fact, I don't know that I believe a single one. Especially when you have a former, if I remember correctly, a former law enforcement and former attorney that said, oh, he used me. You're a pretty sharp cookie if you're law enforcement. You're a pretty sharp cookie. And if you get used, I'm going to say that's on you. Okay. All right. That's John Twitchell saying it. No one else. That is not Phil Lyman. But the bottom line is that conversation with Tim Ballard didn't get to happen. And all the conversation was how bad of a person Tim Ballard was. And it went from being, we need to go after the children and protect the children, to the man that's trying to protect the children
Right.
is the evil one. Boy, if I was Satan, that's exactly what I would want to do. Now, there's a lot to that. And I've said this before. If I was a pedophile, where would I want to go? I would want to go to a group like Underground Railroad, and I would want to be one of their main people, because I could find the ones that have been you're already conditioned.
Yeah, it's so the thing that I've learned, over some of these discussions over the last year or so, you have like an earthquake in Haiti, and all the humanitarian people say, we need humanitarian aid. We need to get to Haiti to save these children. A lot of that is done under the auspice of humanitarian aid, saying there is a market of children in Haiti. We've got to go get them. It's harvest time in Haiti. So OUR, Tim Ballard, Aerial Rescue, some of these groups, they swoop in there to basically rescue children and stop what they know is going to happen. Same thing is happening in Ukraine. Ukraine is a harvest field for children and sex trafficking and sex hotels and all of this stuff. And again, this is not gentle stuff. This is children dying, in captivity and in oblivion, and no one's coming for them. And so you got somebody like Tim Ballard, and he lives in a different world than you and I. He talks about his official job of watching hours and hours of video of pedophilia and child rape, and broken pelvises of 9-month-old babies and things like this. And I hate to even say it, but it's like this reality of something that most people, they can't quite process it, and that works to the advantage of the industry that is promulgating this, and they use it. So yeah, I'm with you.
And then when you go to meet with those men, so it's like portrayed in the movie, you go to meet with the men or the women that are responsible for, hey, I want 50 kids, right? You're going to try to rescue the 50 kids. You go to meet with them. You're not dealing with the Pope, okay, maybe the Pope was pretty bad, but you're not dealing with
you don't
saints.
go to the ice cream parlor to do it.
You're not dealing with, you may be going to an ice cream parlor and it might be some pedophile behind that, but you're dealing with the most evil of people. You're not going and dealing with saints. You may not be able to interact with them in a way where you're a perfect saint.
So I don't want to speak about stuff that I'm not authorized to speak about, but the couple's ruse that Tim basically created. I sit and talk with Tim. I didn't know Tim well until I got caught up by some of the same people that were accusing him, and finding out this is really politically motivated, and it bothered me. But you sit and talk with Tim, and you think, here's a guy who is in law enforcement, who also is pretty good at acting. It's a gift. It's like, there's not very many cops that could go be convincing as an undercover pedophile. So Tim's special in that regard. I think he's worked on that a great deal. And then you get other people that will come in and do what they call the couples ruse. And that takes a lot of practice, a lot of role playing, and the individual who pulled out some of the role playing texts, and then they broadcast it. It's like, oh, this is what he wrote to me. It's like, and I don't know. I have to take a step back and try to reconcile in my mind, why would a good LDS individual like Tim Ballard say such disgusting things to a woman in a text? And if you go to the beginning of the text, he says, let me know if this is too much. Let me know. It's like, you can tap out at any moment. But when we get in the field and they grab my phone to see what I'm saying to my girlfriend, it better not be, hey, we're going to go rescue kids. It better be, when they look at that, they're going to say, you are a sick pervert. Grab the kids. Let's do this deal. Let's get this done. a different world. Again, I don't live in that world, and we would spend all this time down in Texas with Laura Logan, and basically 2 days just kind of filled with well-intended discussions about how do we save these kids. And on the way home, Jody said, "Oh, look, Jason Preston's got a new episode out." And I listened to about the first 10 minutes and I said, I can't do it. Jody, I just can't. I can't. I've had more than I can handle for the last, 2 days, and driving home, I'm not going to listen to another story about raped and abused children. So somebody like Tim Ballard, who's done it for years and years, I mean, yeah, I'll get emotional about it. It's like, goodness, stop crucifying an individual who's genuinely on the front lines. It's like, thank God for people like Tim, honestly. So,
Let's say he's become a little tainted. How can you not become a little tainted? I don't know. And let me be clear. I don't think he necessarily has. But you're swimming in the worst sewer possible. And how many children have been saved by his organization? If you save one child, what does that mean? If you save two children, what does that mean? If you save a handful of children, what does that mean? What if you save 20 children? What does that mean? What does that mean to the king, to the Lord of this land? I think it means everything. And if you're a little tainted and you have to view little things and you have to say things that I would never want repeated around my family, God bless that man. And I will, at the last day, at the judgment seat of the Lord, I will stand up and say, Lord, I know you took all the stripes, but if I have to take a few stripes for that man saving one child, put the guilt on me. Put the guilt on me, because what have I not done in my perfect little world? Praise the Lord. I haven't had any of those issues with my children. Praise the Lord. People know I've got some very big sons you don't want to mess around with, but they weren't always really big.
Yeah.
They were really small and really sweet. And I got daughters that are really sweet. Praise the Lord, none of them would have messed around with, because I can think of some very devious things that I would do.
Yeah.
Let me be clear to finish that. Some very devious things I would do to men that would harm men and women that would harm it. And here's the other thing that I don't think we talk about enough. A significant percentage of these abusers and the people that help these abusers are women. So it's not just men, folks. It's not just men. We want to think it's all men. I wish it was all men, but it's not.
For the industry, for the trafficking industry, it really does require a woman. Very rarely, according to the reports that I've talked to, does the negotiator is it not a woman? Because the women, can basically structure the deal that a guy would be viewed as just a pervert or something, where the women are like, this is a business, and this is what we sell. And, for first timers, it's more than, kids that have been used a lot. So, and, be gentle, stuff like that. It's an industry. It's a huge industry, billions and billions of dollars. And I'm with you. If Tim, if he were tainted, I would probably want to take some things into consideration. I don't believe he is tainted. I don't believe that he is, I believe he's misunderstood. And I think there's lots and lots of information out there too.
And there would be tons of reason that those that don't want that stopped would do everything to make him look bad.
And coming off of a 3-week exercise, I don't know what the language becomes between people and the kind of things that you and I would never talk about, openly, I think gets talked about in a lot more open terms. And so, yeah, when it comes to the politics, to the politics of this, that the timing of the accusations and the takedown of Tim Ballard were so spot on for keeping him from becoming a senator. And then you look at the people that, as this rolls forward and we find out more about the lawsuits and all the lies that have been told, I think you're going to find out that Tim Ballard he's not the devil in this story. He is the opposite of that. And like you, thank God for people who will go to those lengths. And I'm not giving him sainthood. I'm not saying that he doesn't make financial mistakes or marital mistakes or anything else, but it's not what he's been accused of, and not criminal, not the crimes that he's been accused of. And I think I do have a bit of an inside track just because I've paid attention. I've read the lawsuits that have come forward from Pedro Flores, read through that whole document, the whole 90 pages or whatever of that legal complaint. And it's like, oh my goodness, there is an innocent faction to this, and and Tim Ballard is going to be exonerated.
So I'm going to go back to it. Why do we not have leaders of this state saying, we've got bad people, we've got judge,
okay,
fire chief.
Yeah. So I think that
we have a doctor who was doing all these things, and we've got that it's like very clear. And we've got other people that are being named, and we're going after people like Tim Ballard.
Yeah.
And we are the people.
Yeah, it shows you who we are and what's at stake. So I think it was in Taiwan where the feds came across some communications from this fire chief, which led him back to the communications between the fire chief and the judge, and find out that the fire chief was brought in on charges that the judge let him off very lenient. And then they're trading texts or communications back and forth over this app about, swapping nieces and nephews and grandkids and stuff, and whether it's fantasy talk and who knows, but then that leads to scoutmasters that are getting outed. Another judge in Utah that was discovered, and this is the effect of a Trump administration that says we're not messing around with this stuff any longer. And again, if they can take people like that out of our society, what ripple effect of goodness that will bring to children and generations. I mean, they just destroy kids. And so, yeah, hopefully that's what's happening. And like you say, John, the governor who should be, I don't know, like uncompromising and going after the criminals, has instead been kind of uncompromising going after Tim Ballard. Sean Reyes was implicated in this early on. I think it has a lot to do why he's not our attorney general right now. And a lot of this stuff is speculation, but there are enough dots starting to connect that I think the train has left the station. And and I pray that we clean this up in Utah. It's a problem in Utah.
And if we don't clean it up in Utah, I'm sorry, Utah is a special place. God set it aside and brought some of his best people here. And if some of God's best spirits will not stand up, God will clean that house first, and it will be a painful cleaning. And guess what, folks? Even if you're pure, when God took out Israel because they were harming children, that's when it happened. That's when Babylon came in. Not everybody there was harming children. There were good, innocent women who were taken off as slaves. The men were killed. Children and women were taken as slaves. What do you think were being done with them? I guarantee you they were raped. That's going to happen here. It will happen here if we don't clean house on our own. And if you don't stand up and say, and women, I don't expect you to stand up and say, But I do support you I expect women and I expect men to stand up behind men that are willing to say these truths. If we don't stand behind them, we will pay a price, and it will be our women and children that pay that price. Unfortunately, the righteous get harmed when the wicked are taken down.
You find some of these people that you talk to that have been kind of on the side, and it's almost like a contractual signature. It's like, are you part of this? We saw it in Hollywood. We see some of the things there, and it's like, you're going to participate in this, or you're not going to be part of the club. The secret combination. So it does take on a whole level that I think people do understand, of kind of blackmail and buy-in to the corrupt organization. And so, yeah, you get children who have been trafficked that turn into adults, and they become operatives in this, and they know it's like, I continue doing this or I die. It's not a option. And some of the Hollywood stories, it's like, okay, well, we want to give you the part, but before we do that, we're gonna, this is what we're gonna do. It's like, if you're not willing to do that, then you're out. So it's pretty sinister.
And unfortunately, the little children never were given that option.
Right. No, they're just, you get to a certain level, people just view children as a commodity, as an object to satisfy their lust. And that's what, that's the whole concept of depravity, is you go down that scale of human emotion down to the point where it's like, I just see people as bodies and to be used. And they're, and if we deny that level of depravity exists, then we're just in denial.
Right.
That was heavy.
Well,
but I appreciate it, John.
That was heavy.
I really appreciate it because it's like, thanks for bringing it up. We've got to talk about it. We've got to talk about this.
Hey, if we can take care of that, I honestly believe God will bless us. But if we don't,
Can you imagine?
He will damn us. Like I said, the Civil War happened over slavery. And so this is Dwayne's statement. A couple statements from Dwayne. There's more, who is our producer and our call screener. There is more money in trafficking, in human trafficking, than in drugs and guns combined. And he says, all right, gents, that was heavy. That's why we need Phil Lyman. Yes, because Phil Lyman is willing to talk about this. This, if I was a state legislator, if I was the governor, I would be having these conversations and saying, this is the worst thing that we got to get rid of.
Yeah, and
There's
it is sad, like you said, it's sad that the feds
Hey,
are doing Utah's job for them. But thank goodness
yeah,
they're doing
we should be
but
doing this. But I'm sorry, worrying about nuclear missiles hitting us, we're just boom, gone. And guess what? You want to make sure you don't get hit by a nuclear missile? The United States doesn't get taken out. We take this stuff out. That's how we save our own souls. Okay. All right. Let's go. We got about let's have you for another 5 minutes. Dwayne, thanks for being there, brother. Appreciate you. He's got to take off to a GOP meeting. And Phil, you need to get going here soon. So let's plan on finishing up in about 5 minutes. Any thoughts on Trump?
Trump is he's done more in the first 100 days of his presidency than any president in history. It's revolutionary what he's doing. And he is the art of the deal. He is the guy. He's, tariffs. I watch him and it's masterful. And I'm not a fan of tariffs. I don't go around saying we need tariffs, but goodness, the way this guy negotiates and leverages things on behalf of the American people has been phenomenal. Doge is amazing. Elon Musk. I love watching them. I love watching what JD Vance is doing. And do I agree with everything that they do? I look and I've told people I'm not in favor of a king. Trump Trump is about the closest we've come to a king in a long time. I don't know that he has a lot of constitutional constraints, but nor did his predecessors before him, who were using it to take and plunder and basically steal America from us. So I don't know how you come in and fight that, in a diplomatic, distant way. And so, I'm praying for Trump. I pray that he keeps his course. I think he's God's instrument right now. And kind of like the discussion we're having about Tim Ballard. It's like, we need him. We need him to do right, because there's a war going on. So,
what do you think about what's happening at the border? What do you think? What is tariffs? I remember Lee Iacocca, who was the CEO. He was on like Meet the Nation or something like that. Lee Iacocca, when he was the CEO of Chrysler Corp, said, it's an interesting thing that when I send a Jeep over to Japan, that price gets $20,000. I can't remember the exact dollar figure he gave, but a huge dollar amount added to it. But he goes, when it comes from Japan, when a car from Japan, built in Japan, comes to the United States, the price drops when it hits the United States. Folks, that's what's been going on, the tariffs that we've had on us. It's about time. Hey, I'm all about free trade, but we've been dealing in a world that most people don't even realize we've got tariffs against us. So I like the way he's handling it. What about the border? Any other thoughts? And then
I was down at the border in December of 2023, and huge sections of the wall have been removed and then we're laying down so for ease of access. So it wasn't a wall. It was a a gate to get into the United States. And that talking to somebody who was down there just a couple of weeks ago, I asked him, are the big gaps still there? No, the big gaps are not there. And the Border Patrol is there. And there are no illegal crossings, at least very, very few. So it's one of those problems that you can put a stop to. Deporting people, we have to do it. And I think it's done with a lot of compassion for sanctuary seekers. But, let's face it, we've been invaded by fentanyl dealers and human traffickers and predators. And so, and here again, this is another place where good red states are seeing the opportunity to really clean house. And Utah is not one of them. Utah is not one of them that's stepping up and supporting the federal efforts, at least not in a big way.
Phil Lyman is doing a Zoom meeting tonight at 6:30. I had something sent to me, so hopefully you folks get it too. Do you want to mention?
Yeah, it's for state delegates. So if you're a state delegate, hopefully you got the notification. I don't even know how to tell you how to get it. How to
go about getting it.
It's but we've got 3 scheduled in the next few days, and then we'll be doing more coming up to the state convention on May 17th.
Will you be doing one in Utah County and offering treats?
We've had some good Utah County things, and I brought treats just on Saturday. So that was the state convention.
Bill, you didn't tell me anything about it. I'm a state delegate.
The worst when it comes to.
You gotta take care of me. Yeah. All right. Okay, so we're at 5:58. Before I say thank you, Phil, I'm gonna ask this. I would like this from you if you can do. You may not be able to deliver, so I'm not asking for a commitment. All I'm asking for you is I'd love to talk to Laura Logan, and I would love to talk to Tim Ballard and some of those people in that world about the stuff that we talked about today. It needs to be talked about more. I know what's happening to people. Some people are being taken down. So I have repenting to do. And if one child is saved by what we share, if one person doesn't do something, or one person does a little bit less sinning, maybe that helps me just a little bit with receive grace.
Well, I love you for your commitment to that, John, and your authenticity, and you put your money where your mouth is. And yeah, so we are brothers for that. Thank you.
Okay. God bless you, Phil. Have a great evening. I'm going to
Is
text
this
you that request.
this is available
and
off after this, right?
so right now this is being
Mhm.
done live on Twitter and everything. So I'm going to, so you've already been tweeted. I will tweet out thank you for joining me on my Twitter, and I will subtweet you on it, so it will be in your feed.
And
The Phil
people can
Lyman
go back and watch it.
and watch it.
Beautiful.
Yes. And I will even try to get you like the
Okay.
YouTube link or
Well,
something like that.
Yeah, thanks, John.
I
Yeah,
know
let's
a
do
guy.
it again. Let's keep talking.
All right.
I'll hook you up with whoever I can. So, all right.
Okay. Thank you, brother. God bless you. May the Lord be with you, and may the Lord be with Utah, folks. Hang in there. Do Lord's work.